June 17th, 2024, Paris, Eurosatory, the world's largest arms exhibition, and Rheinmetall unveils its newest tank, the KF-51 Panther. Yes, Panther. The same name as the legendary German tank from World War II. A coincidence? Hardly. Rheinmetall knows exactly what that name signifies, what it symbolizes, the technology behind it. But here's what no one at the exhibition is saying. The original Panther from 1943 revolutionized tank design, its sloped armor, its torsion bar suspension, its chassis design. And this technology was copied by everyone. By the Soviets for the T-44, for the T-54, for the T-72, for the T-90, by the Western Allies for the Leopard 1, for the Leopard 2, for the M1 Abrams, 350,000 tanks worldwide, all with concepts that German engineers developed in 1943. And Germany received nothing for it. No royalties, no recognition, no compensation for 80 years. Today, I'm going to tell you the true story of the Panther chassis, the story of a technological revolution, the story of a global heist, and the bitter irony unfolding right now in Ukraine. Let's begin in Russia. 1942. The German armed forces are storming eastward, unstoppable, until they encounter the T-34. The Soviet tank is a surprise. Its sloped armor deflects German shells. Its Christie suspension enables speeds that German tanks cannot achieve. Its simplicity makes it mass-producible. General George Patton is shocked. He writes in his report, "The superiority of the T-34 is obvious. We must react, and Germany reacts." The Army Weapons Agency launches Project VK-3001. Daimler-Benz and Mayenne receive contracts. The goal, a tank that is equal to the T-34, or better. The initial designs are interesting. The Daimler-Benz proposal looks like a German version of the T-34. Same silhouette, same sloped armor, even a similar turret. But man takes a different path. The engineers at MAN study the T-34. They analyze its strengths, but they also analyze its weaknesses, and they find them. The T-34's Christie suspension requires a lot of space inside. The large road wheels with internal springs eat up valuable room. Room that could be used for armor or ammunition. Professor Ernst Lehr and the team at Henschel already had a solution. For the Tiger, torsion bar suspension. The torsion bars lie transversely under the hull floor. They take up no internal space, and they allow for a longer suspension travel than the Christie suspension. MAN adopts this concept for the Panther, but they go further. The sloped armor of the T-34 is effective, but it's not optimized. The angle is too shallow in some places, too steep in others. The German engineers calculate the ideal angle, 55 degrees from the vertical. At this angle, a shell is most likely to ricochet. At this angle, the effective thickness of the armor is greatest. 80 millimeters of steel at 55 degrees is equivalent to 140 millimeters of vertical armor. Almost double, without additional weight. This is the breakthrough. 1943. January, the first Panther OSF-D leaves the factory. The chassis is revolutionary. The hull is made of welded steel plates, but not simply welded. The plates are interlocked, like puzzle pieces. This distributes the energy of a hit over a larger area. The suspension consists of 8 road wheel pairs per side, each pair suspended on a torsion bar. The bars are offset. This keeps the hull floor flat. The transmission is a ZF AK-7-200, 7 gears forward. Synchronized. Before the war, most tanks had unsynchronized transmissions. Drivers had to double clutch, lose time, make mistakes. The Panther doesn't have that. Its transmission shifts as smoothly as a modern car. And the engine? A Maybach HL 230 P30, 700 horsepower, water-cooled. With dry sump lubrication for extreme angles, the overall package is impressive. 45 tons combat weight, 55 kilometers per hour top speed, 200 kilometers range, but the true innovation lies in the details. The side armor is not vertical. It is slightly inclined inward. This makes the hull narrower at the bottom and wider at the deck. More space for the crew, better protection against side fire. The turret is cast from a single piece, no weld seams that could break. The rounded shape deflects shells. A direct hit becomes a glancing blow. And the gun? A KWK 42L70, 70 calibers long. The projectile leaves the barrel at 925 meters per second. It penetrates 140 millimeters of steel at 1,000 meters. No Allied tank is safe. The Sherman penetrated at 2,000 meters. The T-34, the same. The Churchill, problems at the front, but the sides are vulnerable. Only the IS-2 can keep up. But it is slower, heavier, and its reload time is twice as long. The Panther is the best medium tank of World War II. The production numbers confirm this. Between 1943 and 1945, almost 6,000 Panthers were built. In various versions, OSF D, OSF A, OSF G. The Panther fought on all fronts, in Russia, in Italy, in France, in the Ardennes. The Allies feared it. The Soviet T-34 crews called it the Dark Reaper. The American Sherman drivers prayed they would never encounter it. A single Panther could halt an entire column. Its gun hit at 2,000 meters, its armor held at 1,000 meters. The tactic was simple: take position, wait, fire, retreat before the artillery arrived. And it worked. Until the end of the war, the Panther remained feared, until the last bullet. But here begins the story of the heist. July 1943. Kursk, the largest tank battle in history. The German armed forces deploy Panthers on a massive scale. For the first time. And despite technical problems with the early models, the Panther shows its superiority. The Soviet commanders are impressed and worried. Lieutenant Colonel Eugene Leonovich Price from the NIBT Proving Ground, the Soviet Tank Research Center, receives an order: secure an intact Panther tank. We must study it. In mid-July, they succeed. A Panther is captured, damaged, but repairable. It's brought to Kubinka, to the Soviet Union's most secret tank research facility. And there, the work begins. Soviet engineers disassemble the Panther down to the very last bolt. They measure every angle, every thickness, every tolerance, and they are astonished. The sloped armor is more precise than their own. The 55-degree angle is mathematically optimized. Their own calculations confirm it. The torsion bar suspension is superior. Longer travel, less internal space required, better off-road performance at high speed. The transmission is a revelation. Synchronized, smooth, reliable. Their own transmissions are primitive in comparison. But the Soviets are practical. They know they can't copy the Panther. Not directly. The manufacturing tolerances are too tight, the materials too high quality, the production complexity too high. So, they do something else. They extract the concepts, the principles, the ideas, and they apply them to their own designs. Alexander Morozov heads the design bureau in Kharkiv. He developed the T-34, and now he's working on its successor, the T-44. The T-44 looks different from the T-34. Lower, more compact, more modern. But look closer. The sloped armor of the hull, 90 millimeters at 60 degrees, even steeper than on the Panther. But the concept is identical. The suspension? Torsion bars, no longer Christie. The transmission? Synchronized, like the Panther. Coincidence? The timeline says no. Before Kursk, Morozov worked on improvements to the T-34 with Christie suspension, with an unsynchronized transmission. After Kursk, he began work on the T-44, with torsion bars, with a synchronized transmission. Within months, Soviet historiography claims it was an independent development, but the technical documents from the 1990s tell a different story. Morozov had access to the Kubinka reports. He studied the disassembled Panther. He spoke with the engineers who had analyzed it, and he implemented their findings. The timeline is clear. February 1943, Morozov is still working on the T-34 improvement program. With Christie suspension, July 1943. Kursk, the first Panther is captured. August 1943. The Kubinka report is distributed. Morozov receives a copy. September 1943. Morozov begins the T-44 design with torsion bar suspension. The correlation is too strong to be coincidence. The Soviets never officially admitted it. In Soviet history, the T-44 was a purely Soviet development, a triumph of Soviet engineering. But the technical documents, released after the collapse of the Soviet Union, tell a different story. A story of analysis, of copying, of adaptation. The T-44 went into production in 1944. Too late for the war, but it was the foundation for something bigger, the T-54. 1945. The war is over, but the work continues. The Morozov Design Bureau develops the T-44 further. Stronger engine, larger turret, better cannon. The first prototype is called Object 140. It's tested in March 1945. 1949. It goes into mass production as the T-54, and it's better than anything the Soviets had built before. The torsion bar suspension gives it excellent off-road capability. The low silhouette makes it hard to hit. The 100mm cannon can penetrate any Western tank of the early post-war period. The West is shocked. But here's where it gets interesting. 1946, October 22nd, Operation Oswawiakim. 2,200 German engineers are kidnapped in a single night, along with their families, 6,000 people in total. Among them are tank specialists, transmission designers, suspension experts, metallurgists. 22 freight trains wait at stations throughout the Soviet zone. The operation begins at 3 in the morning. Within 12 hours, everyone is loaded, heading east. The families are only allowed to take the bare essentials. 1 suitcase per person, no more. They are not asked. They are not warned. They are taken. The deportees are taken to various secret research facilities, Gorky, Podlipki, Samara, scattered across the Soviet Union. Some stay for 5 years, some 10, some longer. They work under guard. Their letters are censored. Their freedom of movement is restricted, but they work. Exactly what they worked on is still not fully known to this day. The documents are still partially classified, but we know that some of them were involved in tank projects. The German engineers brought knowledge with them, production techniques, materials science, manufacturing methods, knowledge that flowed into the T-54, but also into the T-55, the T-62, the T-72, the T-80, the T-90. The entire Soviet tank line after the war carries the DNA of the Panther within, and no one has paid for it. Let's look at the numbers. T-54 and T-55 combined. At least 96,500 units. Some estimates say 100,000. T-62. about 20,000, T-72, over 25,000, T-80, about 5,500, T-90, over 3,000 and rising. That's almost 250,000 Soviet and Russian tanks, all with torsion bar suspension, all with sloped armor, all with concepts derived from the Panther, but it goes further. China, the Type 59, a licensed version of the T-54, over 10,000 built, with the same technology. India, the T-72 Ajaya, licensed production, thousands of units. Poland, Czechoslovakia, North Korea, all built variants of the T-54 and T-55. And the West copied too. After the war, British, American, and French engineers studied captured German tanks. They analyzed the Panther, the Tiger, the King Tiger, and they learned the American M48 pattern, developed in the early 1950s, used torsion bar suspension like the Panther. The British Centurion already had torsion bars. The British, they adopted the concept from captured German vehicles during the war itself. And what about the German Leopard 1? Development began in 1956. The German armed forces needed a new main battle tank, and the engineers at Porsche and Krauss-Maffei, they knew exactly where to draw their inspiration from. From the Panther, the Leopard 1 features torsion bar suspension, just like the Panther. It has sloped armor on the hull, just like the Panther. It has a synchronized transmission, just like the Panther. These similarities are no accident. Many of the engineers who worked on the Leopard 1 had worked on German tank projects during the war. They knew the Panther, they understood its strengths, and they built upon that foundation. The Leopard 2 followed in 1979, heavier, stronger, more modern. It weighs 62 tons, almost 20 tons more than the Panther, but the fundamental principles are identical. The hull has sloped armor, 70 degrees at the front, steeper than on the Panther, but the same concept, the same mathematics, the same physics. The suspension consists of 7 road wheel pairs per side, each connected to a torsion bar, just like the Panther, only more robust. To handle the increased weight, the transmission is a Renk automatic 4-speed, synchronized. Computer-controlled, but the basic principle, from the Panther, torsion bar suspension, sloped armor, synchronized transmission, the holy trinity of modern tank design, all three from the Panther. And what about the American M1 Abrams, developed in the 1970s, with torsion bar suspension, with sloped armor, with the same concepts that the Panther established in 1943? Let's add it all up. Soviet and Russian tanks, nearly 250,000. Western tanks using Panther concepts, M48 pattern over 11,000, M60 pattern over 15,000, M1 Abrams over 10,000, Leopard 1 over 6,000, Leopard 2 over 3,500, Centurion over 4,000, Chieftain approximately 900, Challenger over 1,000, Chinese tanks over 30,000, the Type 59, the Type 69, the Type 79. All based on the T-54, all with the DNA of the Panther. Indian tanks, thousands of T-72 Ajaya tanks built under license with German technology. Polish tanks, T-55 and T-72 variants, thousands of units. Czechoslovakian tanks, their own versions of the T-54 and T-55, exported to Africa and Asia. North Korean tanks, Chonma-ho, Pokpung-ho, all based on Soviet designs, all with German technology. Pakistani, Egyptian, Syrian, Iraqi tanks. All variants of the T-54, T-55, T-62 or T-72, the total, conservatively estimated, 350,000 tanks, 350,000, all with concepts that German engineers developed in 1943. And Germany. Germany didn't receive a single cent. No licensing fees, no patent royalties, no recognition. Why? Because Germany lost the war. The victorious powers considered German technology as spoils of war, as reparations. As their due right, the patents were declared invalid. The Allies called it denazification, but it was expropriation, systematic, thorough, total. The engineers were abducted or recruited. Operation Osso Aviachim in the east, Operation Paperclip in the west, two sides of the same coin. The knowledge was extracted and distributed. Design drawings, manufacturing instructions, material specifications, test reports, everything. The German companies were not allowed to sue. They were not allowed to protest. They were not even allowed to talk about it. The MAN AG, which had developed the Panther, continued to exist, but without its tank patents, without its technology, without compensation. The same was true for Henschel, for Krupp, for ZF Friedrichshafen, for all German arms companies. Their work was given to the world, for free, without consent, and no one asked for permission. No one offered compensation. No one acknowledged where the technology came from. 2024, Ukraine. By September, Russia had lost 3,368 tanks, 2,317 destroyed, 156 damaged, 364 abandoned, 531 captured, the majority of losses, T-72s. May of 2024 was Russia's worst month. 428 tanks destroyed in a single month, the second deadliest month in the entire war for Russian tank crews. June followed with 359 losses, July with 300, August with 193. The losses are so massive that Russia is pulling T-54s out of storage. Tanks from the 1940s, 80 years old, the T-72, developed in the 1960s, produced since 1973, with torsion bar suspension, with sloped armor, with the DNA of the Panther. But the T-72 has a problem, a deadly problem: the ammunition. In the Panther, and in Western tanks, the ammunition is stored separately from the fighting compartment, or in protected containers. If a projectile penetrates the tank, the entire ammunition supply doesn't automatically explode. In the T-72, it's different. The ammunition is located in a carousel beneath the turret. Unprotected, if a projectile penetrates, if a javelin warhead hits the tank, everything explodes. The crew has no chance. The videos from Ukraine show it brutally. T-72 turrets flying dozens of meters into the air. The jack-in-the-box effect. The nickname is macabre, but fitting. Russian tank crews have another name for it: Dolia, fate. When the turret flies, it's fate. Nothing to be done. Thousands of Russian soldiers have died this way. In fractions of a second, without warning, without a chance. And why? Because Soviet engineers in the 1960s wanted to save space, because they invented the carousel loading system, because they ignored the safety concepts of the Panther. The Germans had always stored the ammunition separately, in the Panther, in the Tiger, in the Königstiger, separate containers, fire protection, explosion protection. The Soviets copied the suspension. They copied the armor, but they didn't copy the safety. And now Russian crews are paying the price. And the Leopard 2. Ukraine has lost about 40 Leopard tanks, out of 199 delivered. But look at the statistics more closely. 10 Leopard 2A4s destroyed, 7 damaged, 4 damaged and abandoned, 6 Leopard 2A6s destroyed, 4 damaged, 2 damaged and abandoned. The difference compared to the T-72 is significant. Leopards get damaged, T-72s explode. Analysts say it's much easier to damage a Leopard 2 and shake up its crew than to kill them. whereas a precise hit on a Russian T-72 can catastrophically destroy both the tank and its crew. The ammunition storage, the design, the safety concepts, the Leopard inherited these from the Panther. The T-72 did not. Both utilized German torsion bar suspension. Both utilize sloped armor. But the Leopard also adopted the German safety concepts. The T-72 only copied half of it, and now Russia is paying the price. But here's the irony. Rheinmetall, the German company building the new Kf-51 Panther, is profiting from the Ukraine crisis. Their stock has risen over 1,000% since 2022. The company is worth billions. And the name Panther, pure marketing. Rheinmetall knows what that name signifies. They know the original Panther was the best medium tank of World War II. They know its technology has shaped 80 years of tank design, and they're leveraging that name to sell their new tank. The Kf-51 Panther has a 130mm gun, larger than anything else on the market. The Leopard 2 only has 120mm. The M1 Abrams, same. The T-90 has 125, but Rheinmetall is pushing further. The Kf-51 features an unmanned turret, the Kf-51U variant, presented at Eurosatory 2024. No crew in the turret. All 3 crew members sit in the hull, protected, survivable. It has state-of-the-art sensors, thermal imaging cameras, radar, LiDAR, artificial intelligence for target acquisition. The Hungarians have signed a development contract, 288 million euros. The Italians are planning to purchase 380 vehicles, a joint venture with Leonardo. The name Panther sells, 80 years after the original. But the chassis, it's based on the Leopard 2, which is based on the Leopard 1, which is based on the Panther. The DNA is the same 80 years later, and Germany is still building on the concepts of 1943. But now, Rheinmetall wants to get paid for it. The Kf-51 costs an estimated 15 to 20 million euros apiece. The Hungarian government has signed a development contract for 288 million euros. Italy plans to purchase 380 vehicles. Billions will flow to Rheinmetall, to Germany. But the foundational technology, Germany gave that away 80 years ago, unwillingly. Let me put this into perspective. If Germany had received even €1 royalty per tank for the 350,000 tanks that use its technology, 350,000 euros, that is nothing compared to what the technology is worth. But Germany didn't even get that. Not a single euro. The engineers who developed the Panther are long dead, their names almost forgotten. Professor Ernst Lehr, who perfected the torsion bar suspension, the engineers at MAN, who designed the chassis, the metallurgists at Krupp, who developed the armor, the specialists at ZF Friedrichshafen, who engineered the transmission. Their work lives on in 350,000 tanks, but their names erased. Soviet historiography attributed the success of the T-54 to Morozov. The American attributed the M48 to Chrysler. The British attributed the Centurion to Leyland. No one mentioned the Germans. No one acknowledged where the ideas came from. And that is perhaps the worst part. Not the money, not the royalties, but the erasure. The systematic removal of German engineering from the historical record, as if the Panther never existed, as if German engineers never existed. 2024, history is slowly correcting itself. Historians are beginning to document the connections. Books are being written, documentaries are being produced, but 80 years of silence is not easily undone. Ask anyone on the street who invented the modern tank. Most will answer, the British, or the Soviets, or the Americans. Hardly anyone will say, the Germans, but the technology doesn't lie. Look at the suspension of a T-90, torsion bars, like the Panther. Look at the armor of an M1 Abrams, sloped armor, like the Panther. Look at the transmission of a Leopard 2, synchronized, like the Panther. 350,000 tanks carry German DNA, and Germany got nothing for it. Let me end with a question. In Ukraine, Russian tank crews are dying in T-72s, tanks with German technology, destroyed by javelins, missiles whose concept traces back to the German Panzerfaust, German technology versus German technology. And on the other side, Leopard 2s are fighting German tanks with German technology against T-72s with stolen German technology. The irony is complete. A cycle of technology, a cycle of theft, a cycle of war. 1943. German engineers develop the Panther to fight Soviet T-34s. 1943. Soviet engineers capture the Panther, copy its technology. 1949. The T-54 goes into production with German DNA. 2024. T-72s with German DNA are fighting Leopard 2s with German DNA, both destroyed by javelins with German DNA. 80 years after World War II, 80 years after the Panther, and German engineering is still determining who lives and who dies on the battlefield. If you appreciate these connections, if you want to understand how German engineering has shaped the world, then support this channel. The Super Thanks button below this video allows me to continue researching, continue documenting, continue to show the truth that is missing from official history books. Every contribution helps, every share spreads the knowledge. Now, it's your turn. Did you know that 350,000 tanks use German technology? Did you know that Germany never received a cent for it? Write your opinion in the comments. And if you want to learn more about the hidden German roots of modern technology, be sure to subscribe to this channel and absolutely activate that notification bell, because the next revelation is coming soon. Until then, farewell.